The flight to the Seychelles was a smooth one, the faint hum of the engine blending into the whispers of soft conversations and the occasional clink of glasses. My sons sat beside me, Oliver confident and poised as always, and Ryan, leaning back in his seat with an easy smile. I watched them both, a wave of pride and an ache of nostalgia rising in equal measure. They were my heart, my anchor through the storms of life. It had been 2 years since Ron left. When the truth came out, it hit like a tidal wave. He hadn't left me for another woman, not entirely. There had been years of deceit, liaisons with other men he had hidden behind the mask of our marriage. I had been blindsided, but in hindsight perhaps there had been signs. I had chosen not to see them, burying myself in my role as a wife and, more importantly, as a mother. Ryan and Oliver had been my lifelines. While Ron was unraveling our marriage in private, they were building their lives, building their business, and finding their own places in the world. I'd always admired their independence. They didn't need me the way most children might need their mother. They had each other. But that didn't stop them from ensuring I never felt alone. Every Sunday dinner, every unexpected visit, every small gesture. Those moments had sustained me through the hollow days after Ron's departure. When they announced their gift, a trip to the Seychelles, the surprise left me breathless. I had never been good at accepting gifts, but the sparkle in their eyes as they presented it left me no choice. "You've done so much for us, Mom," Ryan said, his voice carrying that mix of boyish charm and deep sincerity. "Let us spoil you for once." And now here we were, descending into paradise. The villa was perched on the edge of a sapphire ocean, with floor-to-ceiling windows that opened to a view I could have only dreamed of. Palm trees swayed lazily in the breeze, their shadows dancing across the white sand. "This is beyond anything I could have imagined," I whispered, feeling Ryan's arm sling around my shoulders. "It's perfect for you," Oliver said, standing by the window with his hands in his pockets, the corner of his mouth twitching into a smile. He always carried an air of composed restraint, but I could see the joy in his eyes. He was proud to have brought us here. The days unfolded like pages of a well-loved novel. We spent mornings walking along the beach, the sand warm beneath our feet, the ocean stretching endlessly before us. Evenings were spent lingering over wine and laughter, the sound of waves crashing in the distance. It was the kind of escape I hadn't realized I needed until I was living it. What struck me most, though, was how our relationship seemed to transform in this idyllic setting. We had always been close, but there was a new depth to our conversations, a new openness that felt both exhilarating and tender. I learned things about Ryan and Oliver that I hadn't known before. Their fears, their dreams, the pressures they carried. It humbled me to realize how much they had held back to shield me, to protect me from feeling like a burden. One night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of lavender and gold, Oliver suggested a late swim. "Come on, Mom," he urged, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "You've been watching the ocean long enough. It's time to feel it." I hesitated, glancing at the water, but Ryan was already tugging my hand. "We're not taking no for an answer," he said, grinning. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and soon we were wading into the cool embrace of the sea. The water lapped around us, the moonlight reflecting off its surface like a million scattered diamonds. "This feels like freedom," I murmured, tilting my face toward the sky. The weight of the past, the betrayals, the loneliness, seemed to dissolve into the vast expanse around us. Ryan floated beside me, his voice soft. "You deserve this, Mom. More than you know." Oliver, ever the quieter of the two, simply nodded, but the look in his eyes spoke volumes. I felt something shift in that moment, a connection that went beyond words, an understanding that perhaps we were more than just a mother and her sons. We were companions, bound not just by blood but by the shared journey of navigating a world that often felt too sharp, too cruel. Back at the villa, we dried off and gathered on the balcony. The air was warm, the sound of cicadas harmonizing with the distant waves. Ryan poured another round of wine, his laughter echoing as he recounted a story from their business days. I couldn't help but watch them both, my heart full in a way that almost brought tears to my eyes. I loved them fiercely, deeply, more than I had ever thought possible. "Are you okay?" Oliver's voice broke through my thoughts. He was watching me with that steady gaze of his, one that always seemed to see straight through me. I nodded, smiling softly. "I'm more than okay. I'm grateful." For you both. Ryan leaned forward, his grin teasing. Grateful enough to let us plan another trip? I laughed, shaking my head. Let's survive this one first. But as the night wore on, I realized something profound. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was living, truly living, and it was because of them. Because they loved me. And, as I realized with a bittersweet pang, because I loved them too, in ways that I was only beginning to understand. The restaurant was nestled on the edge of the island, its open-air seating offering an uninterrupted view of the moonlit ocean. Soft jazz played in the background, mingling with the sound of waves crashing against the shore. Candles flickered on each table, casting a warm, golden glow. It was the kind of place that felt suspended in time, the perfect setting for the three of us to let loose and simply be. Oliver had chosen the wine, of course. He had a talent for picking the perfect bottle. Something he attributed to his endless client dinners. A Bordeaux, he announced as the waiter poured, his tone teasingly formal. Rich, complex, and just a little too sophisticated, like me? Ryan snorted, leaning back in his chair. Sophisticated, sure. But rich. I'm the one who handles the finances, remember? I laughed, shaking my head as I took a sip of the wine. It was smooth and full-bodied, warming me from the inside out. Both of you are impossible, I said, but my voice was light, filled with affection. As the night wore on, the wine flowed freely and the conversation grew more relaxed, more intimate. We reminisced about old times, Christmas mornings spent in our chaotic living room, road trips that always seemed to end in some hilarious disaster. But we also talked about things we hadn't before. You were always so strong, Ryan said suddenly, his voice quieter than usual. He was leaning on the table, his glass cradled in his hand. After Dad left, I didn't know how you did it. The mention of Ron was like a ripple across the surface of still water, but I didn't shy away from it. Because of you too, I said simply. I couldn't fall apart when I had you both to take care of. Oliver reached over and placed a hand over mine. You've always taken care of us, Diane, he said softly, his use of my name deliberate, almost reverent. Maybe it's time we take care of you. I blinked, startled by the way my name sounded coming from his lips. Felt strange but not unwelcome. I smiled, squeezing his hand. You've both already done more than I could ever ask for. Ryan raised his glass, his grin lopsided. To Diane, he declared. The strongest woman we know. Oliver chuckled, lifting his own glass. To Diane, he echoed, his eyes locking with mine for a moment longer than seemed necessary. I laughed, feeling the warmth of the wine and their words wash over me. All right, I said, lifting my glass. To us. The toast felt like a promise, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond we shared. A bond that, even now, was evolving in ways I couldn't quite put into words. By the time we returned to the villa, the stars had taken over the sky, their light reflecting off the ocean in a way that made the world feel infinite. I was laughing, my steps unsteady as Ryan helped me up the stairs. The wine had gone straight to my head and I was delightfully tipsy, the kind of carefree I hadn't felt in years. You're drunk, Ryan teased, his arm around my waist to steady me. I am not, I protested, though my slurred words betrayed me. I'm just happy. Oliver was behind us, carrying my heels, his own steps slower, more measured. We should do this more often, he said, his tone thoughtful. Just the three of us. I turned to look at him, my head spinning slightly. You mean drink me under the table? He smiled, and for a moment the weight of his gaze made my breath catch. I mean spend time together. Like this. We made it inside, collapsing onto the oversized couch in the living room. The laughter bubbled up again as Ryan recounted something absurd from dinner. A waiter nearly tripping over a candle, and I found myself leaning against him, my head resting on his shoulder. Oliver sat beside me, close enough that our knees touched. It was in that moment, nestled between them, that I realized we were no longer mother and sons in the conventional sense. We were something else, something more equal, more intertwined. It felt both exhilarating and terrifying. I love you both, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. So much. Ryan kissed the top of my head. We love you too, Diane. Oliver reached for my hand, his fingers lacing with mine. More than you know. There was a pause, a charged silence that seemed to fill the room. I turned to look at Oliver, and for the first time, I noticed the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. the way his thumb brushed over my knuckles in a gesture that felt far too intimate. "Maybe we should get some air," Ryan suggested, his voice unusually husky. I nodded, grateful for the suggestion, though I wasn't sure air would do much to dispel the tension that had settled between us. We moved to the balcony, the night air cool against my flushed skin. The three of us stood side by side, looking out at the endless expanse of ocean. I felt their presence on either side of me, grounding and intoxicating all at once. And then, as if drawn by the same invisible force, we turned toward each other. Ryan was the first to step closer, his arms wrapping around me in a hug that felt deeper than any we'd shared before. Oliver joined, his embrace completing the circle. I felt their warmth, their strength, and for a moment I let myself lean into it completely. When I looked up, our faces were close, too close. My heart pounded as I met Oliver's gaze, then Ryan's. It felt as though the world had stopped, the only sound the distant crash of waves. "Diane," Ryan whispered, his voice barely audible, his hand brushing a strand of hair from my face. It was Oliver who moved first, his lips brushing against my temple in a gesture that was both innocent and not. Ryan followed, his kiss landing just at the corner of my mouth. My breath caught, and for a moment I forgot how to think, how to move. The boundaries between us were dissolving, melting away under the weight of the moment. I didn't know where this was going, but I knew there was no turning back. Not anymore. The air on the balcony was dense with unspoken tension, the kind that seems to wrap around you, soft and inescapable. I tried to steady my breathing, to make sense of the moment that had just passed. Ryan's hand was still on my cheek, his thumb tracing a gentle arc over my skin, while Oliver's arm lingered around my waist, grounding me but also pulling me into something I didn't entirely understand. "Maybe we should," I started, but the words faltered, vanishing into the thick night air. What could I possibly say to diffuse the charged energy between us? Ryan tilted his head, studying me as if searching for the words I hadn't spoken. "You don't have to say anything, Diane," he murmured. My name on his lips felt like a soft ripple through me, breaking the surface of emotions I hadn't allowed myself to confront. Oliver, ever quieter but no less present, gave me a look I couldn't decipher. His hand slid down to rest on the small of my back, his touch steady and deliberate. "You're always worrying," he said softly, his voice rich with a tenderness that both comforted and unnerved me. "You don't have to. Not with us." A part of me wanted to pull away, to retreat to the safety of my room and put distance between us. But another part, a deeper, unspoken part, felt anchored to them. I couldn't move, and maybe I didn't want to. The sound of waves crashing against the shore filled the silence between us, a rhythmic backdrop to the emotions swirling in the stillness. I turned to face them fully, searching their faces for some semblance of reason, but all I found was that same openness, that same love I'd always known. Only now it felt different. "You're both too good to me," I said finally, my voice trembling with the weight of everything I didn't know how to say. Ryan chuckled, a low, quiet sound that seemed to vibrate through the night. "You deserve it, Diane. More than you think." Oliver nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "We just want you to be happy. That's all we've ever wanted." Their words wrapped around me like a warm embrace, and for a moment I let myself lean into them. I let go of the ache of the past, the years of loneliness and self-doubt that Ron had left behind. With Ryan and Oliver, I felt seen, cherished in a way that was almost overwhelming. Back inside the villa, the room was dim, the only light coming from a small lamp on the bedside table. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands clasped tightly in my lap as I tried to collect my thoughts. Ryan and Oliver had followed me in, their presence filling the space with an energy I couldn't ignore. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed casually over his chest, while Oliver sat in the chair across from me, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp, watchful. "You're thinking too much again," Ryan said, breaking the silence. There was a playful edge to his tone, but the warmth beneath it was unmistakable. I smiled faintly, shaking my head. "You know me too well." "Of course we do," Oliver said, his voice low and steady. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees as he regarded me with that same intensity that always left me feeling bare, exposed. "We've always known you, Diane." Hearing my name again sent a shiver through me. It was such a simple thing, but the way they said it felt intimate, deliberate. As if we were no longer bound by titles or roles, but something deeper, something unspoken. Ryan pushed off the doorframe and crossed the room to sit beside me. His arm brushed mine, the touch electric despite its simplicity. "We just want you to be happy," he said again, softer this time, as if it were the most important truth in the world. "I am happy," I whispered, though my voice wavered with the weight of the moment. Oliver stood then, moving to stand in front of me. He reached out, his hand cupping my cheek in a gesture so tender it took my breath away. "Are you?" he asked, his voice a quiet challenge. I nodded, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. The words wouldn't come, caught in the storm of emotions that swirled between us. Ryan's hand found mine, his fingers lacing with mine in a gesture that felt both grounding and intimate. "Diane," he murmured, drawing my attention back to him. "You've always been everything to us. You know that, right?" Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, and I bit my lip to keep them from falling. "I don't know what I'd do without you," I admitted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. Oliver smiled then, a soft, knowing smile that made my chest ache. "You'll never have to find out." In that moment, the boundaries between us dissolved entirely. I didn't know what came next or how to navigate this new, uncharted territory we had stumbled into. But as Ryan pressed a gentle kiss to my temple and Oliver's hand moved to rest against the curve of my neck, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. The night stretched on, the three of us caught in a fragile, beautiful limbo between the past we had left behind and the future we were just beginning to glimpse. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, but as I lay there with Ryan on one side and Oliver on the other, their warmth anchoring me to the present, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this was where I was meant to be. With them. The trip ended far too soon, though it felt as if the three of us had lived an entire lifetime in those few sun-drenched days. The Seychelles had worked its magic not just on our bodies but on something deeper, something that bound us together in ways I could barely comprehend. As the plane took off, carrying us back home, I looked at Ryan and Oliver seated beside me. They were laughing at something, their voices low and easy. It struck me how much they had changed in such a short time. There was a weightlessness about them, a sense of clarity I hadn't seen before. And I felt different too. The Diane who had arrived on this island had carried the scars of betrayal and years of loneliness, her world defined by duty and endurance. But the Diane returning home now was lighter, radiant in a way that even I couldn't deny. The way Ryan and Oliver glanced at me, subtle but full of warmth and admiration, told me they saw it too. "You're glowing," Ryan said suddenly, leaning closer as if studying me under a magnifying glass. I laughed, shaking my head. "It's just the tan," I teased, though the blush creeping up my neck betrayed me. "It's not just the tan," Oliver said, his voice steady but filled with something else, something deeper. His gaze held mine for a moment, and in it, I saw the same unspoken understanding that had tethered us together since that first night on the beach. Life back home settled into its rhythm, but it didn't feel the same. Everything seemed brighter, more alive. My mornings, once filled with quiet solitude, were now punctuated by calls and visits from Ryan and Oliver. They had always been good about keeping in touch, but now it was different. They didn't just visit me, they lingered. Ryan broke the news about Elizabeth a week after we returned. He came over one evening, his expression calm but resolute. "I ended things with Elizabeth," he said as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. I raised an eyebrow, though I wasn't entirely surprised. "You two seemed happy," I said carefully, testing the waters. He gave a small shrug, his fingers tapping absently on the armrest of his chair. "We were, I guess. But it wasn't enough. After the trip, I realized I was forcing something that didn't feel right." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. He turned to look at me then, his gaze steady. "It's hard to explain, Diane, but being with you and Oliver, it reminded me of what matters. What feels real." The way he said my name sent a familiar warmth through me, but I pushed it aside, focusing instead on the clarity in his voice. "You deserve to be with someone who makes you happy," I said softly. "I already am," he replied, the weight of his words settling between us. I didn't press him further. We sat there in comfortable silence, the sun dipping below the horizon as if it too understood the unspoken truths we shared. Oliver had changed too. He threw himself into the business with a focus and determination I hadn't seen before, but he was careful not to let it consume him. He made time for dinners at my house, for quiet conversations and walks around the neighborhood. "You seem different," I said one evening as we stood in the kitchen washing dishes side by side. "Good different or bad different?" he asked, a small smile playing on his lips. "Good," I said firmly. "More grounded." He nodded, his smile fading into something softer. "That trip changed everything," he admitted. "For all of us, I think." I didn't respond right away, letting his words settle. "It did," I agreed finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Oliver set the dish he was holding on the counter and turned to face me. "You're different too, you know," he said, his tone quiet but insistent. "It's like you've come alive." His words brought a lump to my throat, but I managed to smile. "Maybe I have," I said. The weeks turned into months, and the changes in all of us only deepened. I started taking more time for myself, discovering things I hadn't realized I'd missed. Painting, gardening, even the occasional yoga class. My reflection in the mirror no longer felt like a stranger. My sons noticed too. "You look incredible," Ryan said one evening as we were leaving a family dinner. "Seriously, Diane, you're glowing." I laughed, brushing off his words, but the way he and Oliver exchanged a knowing look told me they meant it. The bond between us had shifted in ways that were both subtle and profound. We no longer fell into the roles of mother and sons, but something more fluid, more equal. They were men now, strong, self-assured, and fiercely devoted. And I was finally letting myself be seen. One evening, as we sat around the fire pit in my backyard, Oliver leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the flames. "We should do another trip," he said casually, but his tone was anything but. Ryan grinned, raising his glass. "I'm all for it." I shook my head, laughing softly. "You two are relentless." "We mean it," Ryan said, his voice taking on a serious edge. "These trips, they remind us of what matters." Oliver nodded, his eyes meeting mine. "You matter," he said simply. Tears stung at the corners of my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Instead, I raised my glass, smiling at the two men who had become not just my sons, but my anchors, my companions, my everything. "To us," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion swelling in my chest. They echoed the toast, their smiles as warm and genuine as the firelight that danced between us. As the night stretched on, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. We had come through the fire together, emerging not just stronger but happier, freer. The past was behind us, and the future stretched out before us, as bright and boundless as the ocean we had left behind. We were home. And for the first time in a long time, I knew we were exactly where we were meant to be.